and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. We have a reading this morning. It's by Kenny Wiley, and it's entitled, Your Life Matters. Right now, we as Unitarian Universalists are being called to act. We are being called by our ancestors, those who demanded that we help end slavery, that we fight for suffrage, that we join the struggle to end Jim Crow, that we listen to and honor Black power. Lydia Maria Child and William Lloyd Garrison are calling us. Lucy Stone is calling us. Fannie B. Williams and Frances Ellen Harper are calling us. James Reeb is calling us. Viola Liuzzo is calling us. Guided by that enduring, unfulfilled promise of the belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, ours is a faith that has said or worked to say to those who have been marginalized, you are a woman and your life matters. You are gay or lesbian and your life matters. You are transgender and your life matters. You are bisexual and your life matters. You have a disability and your life matters. You were not loved as a child and your life matters. You struggle with depression and your life matters. Right now, we are being called by our ancestors, by our principals, by young Black activists across the country to promote and affirm you are young and Black and your life matters. You stole something and your life matters. I have been taught to fear you and your life matters. The police are releasing your criminal record and your life matters. They're calling you a thug and your life matters. Our ancestors, principals, and fellow humans are calling on us to promote, affirm with deeds and words, Black Lives Matter.
Wow, what a powerful reading. Thank you, Darby. I like doing these. In the past few weeks, I have pre-recorded my talks, and today I am live, and that way I can reflect live on this reading. I feel extremely touched, and what I heard is that we're called to love, and if we allow love to inform how we relate to one another, then everybody matters. That's what love does. It's the equalizer, the great equalizer. All of a sudden, the differences are not highlighted and spotlighted. We all matter. Thank you for choosing that reading, Darby. If you're only joining us now, I am Reverend G, minister at the Unitarian Universalist Community Church. Our physical building, as Darby had mentioned before, is on Shaver Road in Portage. And hopefully soon enough, we will be able to return there as more and more of us are getting vaccinated and COVID is more under control. We certainly look forward to meeting in person again. Today, the topic is heavy, deep, and real because we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. I can hardly believe it that it's already been a year. It seems like it was yesterday. And the actual anniversary, I believe, is Tuesday. And so I titled this talk, Defund the Police. And the reason I did that, because it's a controversial term. And I remember when I first heard it, I was taken aback because I certainly don't believe that at this moment in time, we can go without police. And I thought, when I first heard the term, that it refers to abolishing the police, undoing not having police at all. And then I was explained what they actually mean by it. And then I thought, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But the problem is that it is a term that needs explanation, because without explanation, people might think like I did first, that it is about wanting to completely abolish the police. And I doubt not that there are some who would love to see that happen. Nonetheless, this is not about abolishing the police. This is about restructuring the police. Currently, police is, there are social workers, there are healthcare providers, there are peacemakers. There's so much is expected of them that they are neither trained for, nor should they be, that they are unable to handle, and they are put in these high stress situations. And unfortunately, people with guns settle disputes differently than people without. So that's what this term is about. Take some funds away from the police and fund social workers, departments, healthcare, and mental health institutions, so they are better equipped to deal with calls that don't belong with the police, and that calls that so often end tragically. That's what this is about. So Reverend Harold and I have had some conversations about this, and we thought, well, why don't we both present some of the views that we hold on these topics and explore them, and invite you to also think about them and determine, where do you stand, or where would you like to stand? Bring it into awareness and consciousness. So Harold will develop a few points, and then I will come in and also give a few more closing words. So I'm going to hand it over to Harold right now.
Thank you, G, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this issue. It's an important issue for me and for everybody else, pretty much, I think. And there are three areas concerning policing in America that I wish to cover. It is an important and complex concern. The first concerns the need for police in a large and complex society such as ours. I think we can all agree that we need police. Even those of us who live in neighborhoods where police rarely, if ever, appear, you can imagine that if there were no police in Kalamazoo County, that we would be vulnerable. That would mean there would be people, those people who would want to take the liberty to steal, intimidate, hurt, or even murder people with impunity. We'd have to depend on ourselves and arm ourselves, and I don't think that would be the kind of society that we would want. A good example of this that explicates this point comes from my friend and friend of many of yours, Don Cooney, who lives in the Millwood neighborhood, which has a reputation being kind of rough. And there are some immigrants who have been victims of robbery and other kinds of crime, but they will not contact the police for obvious reasons, for they are afraid of being deported. And so Don worked with them and the police to reassure them that it's not the mission of the police to be an extension of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. And after they were reassured, they would contact the police whenever they were a victim of crime and no longer a target for the robbers. For better or worse, we need the power of the police to protect people. And from my observations, the vast majority of police officers do their job well. And that is to truly preserve the peace and protect our citizens. Second point concerns the power of police. The main lesson I took away from studying political science at the Ohio State University is that politics is about power. One of my professors would define power as that ability of a person to get somebody else to do something that they wouldn't do on their own. In other words, politics is the idea of who gets to decide how benefits and punishments are meted out and to whom, and who makes the decisions of how things are run, and who gets to use physical force and who does not. Politics happens anytime two or more people gather together to create a project. Politics is everywhere. I'm amused when churches have conflict and a member might say, well, I don't like the politics that's going on now, as if politics doesn't happen any other time. It's always there. It's our relationship to power. I like to say that my mission as a minister, or retired minister, and a political actor is to check power of the powerful when they misuse their power and to empower the powerless. Now, the greatest power of any society belongs to the military and the police. In our nation, both the military and the police are supposedly under civilian control. In many cases, that is problematic because the political influence of the police in the military-industrial complex tend to control the power arrangements of our society. We can note that to the extent that in a society where the military and police are controlled by authoritarian entities, that society suffers from injustice and oppression. Clearly, police have immense power. For example, they can arrest any person on the pretext of disturbing the peace. They also have the power to use deadly force in a way that ordinary citizens do not. But it's important to keep in mind that the police are not the military. What would it mean if police were to act like soldiers? Soldiers have a mission to seek out and destroy the enemy. If police were to act like soldiers, then we would have to ask ourselves, who is the enemy and how are they to be destroyed? Again, the mission of the police is to preserve the peace and protect our citizens. In other words, they're part of our community. They're not invading soldiers. Unlike soldiers who win battles and earn medals, when police do their job, nothing much happens. The situation restores to peace, to orderliness. Instead, a disturbing situation is brought back to peace, and sometimes a person is arrested. And we don't hear about the police who are doing their jobs well, because again, nothing much happens. One of the main differences between soldiers and police officers is that often when soldiers are in the news, it is to be honored for the service to their country and their bravery, when they get a medal, for example. When the police are the focus of the news story, it's almost certainly a bad situation. I will note, however, that during the course of their careers, 95% of police officers never draw their guns. But there is a problem with our police right now, that in many ways they are becoming militarized, which means they're acting more like soldiers than as peace officers. Also, since the 1960s, our society has decided to solve some of our most difficult problems of race and poverty, which I'll talk about later, by using the strategy of police oppression and mass incarceration. In other words, the police are called upon to solve problems that are beyond their control purview. We need to do more and better in solving these problems as a society without the use of police. But now we have so many examples where the police inappropriately have acted like soldiers that led to tragedy. Recently, a truck full of police officers dressed in army fatigues and carrying automatic rifles race as if they're going off to war, but actually they're going to make a misdemeanor drug arrest of a man who had no history of violence. That encounter ended up with the police shooting and killing the man. It's clear that police did not need to use deadly force. Unfortunately, and this is all too common, the district attorney refused to prosecute them. Truly, prosecutors are part of the problem. They rarely prosecute police, even in the clearest case of a criminal act, because they have a conflict of interest in that they work closely with the police, indeed often become friends with them. And thus it could be seen as an act of betrayal if they prosecute aggressively a police officer. As in any other organization, I think people can acknowledge that there will always be some bad apples in the police force. But when the police can act badly without consequence, there is a problem. For when they, quote, get away with it, end quote, there's a certain element of the police that will continue to use deadly force indiscriminately, and often in a way that reflects their animus to particular groups of people, in particular Black men. Additionally, and this is important, they can destroy people's trust in the police, which means that they cannot do their work effectively or fairly. Which brings me to my final point, race. Racism exists in our nation. It's in the ether. We're all affected by it, some more than others. I used to believe that cops were as racist to the extent that racism exists in our country, the rest of society. But I don't believe that now. For one thing, police work often attracts authoritarian personalities, and authoritarian personalities often tend to be racist. Second, there are white supremacist groups that are actively attempting to promote their kind to become police officers. And to some extent, they're succeeding. I saw how racism worked with the police when I worked as a Vista worker in the ghetto in Pittsburgh. I noted how the police showed disrespect to certain people, especially young Black men. But I also noted that the community as a whole wanted the police there, but they wanted them to do their work better. For police oftentimes neglect the needs of poor people when they're in danger. I believe we need to reform the police, first, making them more professional class and paid accordingly. They should take advanced degrees in social work, psychology, political science, and sociology and the like. Studies do show that the more education a police officer has, the less likely she or he will use unnecessary force. Second, there needs to be a strong psychological screening of potential police to weed out the highly prejudiced, the overly domineering, and the easily frightened. And finally, as I said before, we need to do more to solve our problems of poverty and race. That would go a long way to lessen our need for police to interfere in the first place in our having good and peaceful lives.
Well, yes, thank you, Harold. And I love the depth of your developing these topics. And so the other aspect that I would like to speak to is, sure, police have to have more education. I also believe that we shouldn't have 20-year-olds in our police force. Especially males. Their frontal cortex is not quite developed yet. So therefore, putting them into these stressful situations, they may not use the best of judgments, even if the training is good and sound. But what I would like to reflect to is this. Any human being, our deepest desire is to belong. We want to belong with our families, to have that strong sense of belonging with our families, with society, the country that we live in. And now imagine if you are hunted, how hard it is to have that sense of belonging. And us whites, you know, I have never been scared when I was pulled over by the police. I have been pulled over several times, and sure, it was, I didn't like getting a ticket for speeding or for running I got a ticket for running an amber light. But anyway, I didn't fear for my life. That is not true for a Black American. If they are pulled over by the police, it could end anyway, and some ways may not be good ways. This dog opened the door on alone. Sorry. Okay. I apologize. Welcome to the Church of the Holy Living Room. So it is terrible not to have that sense of belonging. And how do we as a society contribute to all of us having the sense of belonging, that we have equal rights, that we have equal opportunities, that the color of our skin will not determine how we are going to be treated or perceived in society. How do we get to that point? So this is a very tragic anniversary. And it also has the potential for transformation. And sometimes us human beings are just so weird like that, that something really tragic has to happen for us to make a shift, make a change. The change that I have already seen is that the policeman who murdered George Floyd was persecuted and found guilty on all accounts. So that is already a step in the right direction. You can't kill without impunity, even if you're a policeman. However, there's more transformation that is needed. In Hungarian, we have the saying that you must hit the iron while it's hot, while it's red, and it's still red. So what do we need to do together to create a society where we can belong? And it's not just Black Americans who can belong, but as Darby read, there was in that reading before, the bisexual, the gays, the Asians, the minorities, the disabled, everybody can have the sense of belonging and being perceived and treated with kindness, respect, compassion, and love, the great equalizer. And we all can have a role in it. And some of us may feel, you know, we've been at this for a very, very long time. And quite frankly, we're disheartened that little progress has been made. And we're tired. And still, all of us can still have a role in making this society more equitable, kinder. Some of us can donate money to political parties that represent these values. Others can take a more active role in campaigning, in petitioning. We can all have roles, and ultimately, we all have a powerful vote. We can all choose to vote in people into powerful positions that represent the values that lead to this more equitable, kind, compassionate society where all of us can have this sense of belonging. Because let me tell you something, when you feel hunted, when you feel unsafe, it does something to a human being's psyche. It also does something to a human being's physical well-being, because when you're always constantly under stress, the body releases all this cortisol, which then creates heart disease and all kinds of other diseases, and leads to a life that is just so hard to live. And we should want each other to have beautiful lives with possibilities, with a sense of belonging, where love is the common ground. And for that, we do have to reform the police. The police is not our only institution that we have to reform, but that is one that where the where the iron is hot right now, it's red. So I hope that we all find a way to employ ourselves in affecting this change. And that would be a beautiful anniversary where tragedy is transformed into opportunity, and it transcends and creates compassion, kindness, equity, a way of life that is just better to live for all of us. And so it is.